Today I'm going to tell you a story about something that happened to me when I was a sophomore in high school. It's funny, even though it's been 44 years since the experience that I'm about to share, recent events have made it seem like yesterday. Here's the story. In 1968, I was a sophomore in high school. I loved athletics, even though I wasn't very good at them. And so I wanted to try out for the high school football team. I can remember going to the practices, and the sophomores and the juniors and the seniors were there. And we were all trying to find spots on the sophomore team, the JV team, and the varsity team. I can remember looking at the varsity players who were in their practice uniforms, and when I looked at their uniforms, I looked at the sleeve of their uniforms, and I saw something that shocked me. There on the sleeve of the uniform was the Confederate flag. Now, I grew up in Racine, Wisconsin, and I attended William Horlick High School, and so the Confederate flag seemed completely out of place. On top of this, my parents, who were Southerners, had moved from the South to avoid the Confederate flag, the prejudice and the discrimination that they'd grown up with. Anyhow, when I saw the Confederate flag on the sleeves of the varsity players' practice jerseys, I made a decision. And I turned to one of my friends and I said, by the time I'm a senior, I will work to get rid of that flag as the school symbol. You see, at Horlick, we were the Horlick Rebels. Our symbol was the Confederate flag, and our mascot was a squatty, short caricature of a Confederate officer. Well, from my sophomore year came my junior year and then my senior year. By my senior year, I wasn't the valedictorian and I wasn't the most popular person, but I was pretty well known. So I decided to strike while the iron was hot. We had a brand new principal. His name was Walter Stinovich, and so I set up an appointment to go and to talk to Mr. Stinovich. I came into his office and I said, Mr. Stinovich, there's something I'd like to talk to you about, and it's really concerning to me. And he said, well, Milt, tell me what it is. And I said, sir, it is unacceptable that our high school would have the Confederate flag as its symbol. By this point, it was 1971. Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement had gained a lot of territory in the area of doing away with discrimination, and we were making significant progress. So I said, Mr. Stinovich, it's unacceptable. When I look at everything that's going on in our society and all the steps, all the progress that's being made, why do we have a Confederate flag? He could see my reasoning, and so I suggested a pathway toward an alternative. I said, Mr. Stinovich, would it be possible to have a contest to select a new flag? We could have students, especially those students who have artistic ability and talent, they could design a new flag. And the student body could vote and select the new flag, and it could move us in a completely different direction. He agreed with my strategy, but he threw in a caveat. That is, he threw in a condition. He said, I'll go along with this as long as the current flag is also one of the choices. Now, I wasn't crazy about that condition. I hate and hated the Confederate flag. But since I wasn't in a position of power, and I believed that my classmates, who were subject to the same kind of wind of change that was going on throughout the country at this time, I thought for sure they'll see the wisdom and they'll see the rightness of doing away with the Confederate flag as our school symbol. So I agreed to it. Well, we started the process. We asked for students to develop designs and to create a new flag. The day came where we displayed all of the flag designs. Some of them were just unbelievably outstanding in that they incorporated in the North Star, which was a part of the background of Horlick High School being on the north side of town, and the colors scarlet and gray, and the whole concept of being rebels. Well, the day of the vote arrived, and I was so excited about it. Now, I've also got to tell you that part of my excitement, though, was tempered by the fact that in the weeks before, I had had close friends whom I had known since elementary school and even junior high. Some of them threatened me. One was going to jump me and slam me up against a locker because I was creating such a fuss, in his words, over nothing. Why couldn't I just leave well enough alone? Well, the vote was taken, and unfortunately, the current Horlick flag, the Confederate flag, was selected. I was devastated. I couldn't understand how my classmates didn't see the things that I was seeing. I was so angry at the result of that vote that a few weeks later, when yearbook pictures were taken, I refused to have my picture taken for the yearbook. As a matter of fact, if you look at a 1971 Horlick yearbook, you will see that the only picture of me in the yearbook is as a member of the football team. There's no individual pictures at all. Well, I left high school bitter about that. A few years later, I decided, since I was home for Christmas break, to go to a basketball game in the field house. And so I climbed the bleachers and started to watch the game. And I told myself, don't you dare look up on the field house wall at the flag. Because we had had a large Horlick flag, which again had been the Confederate flag, displayed on the wall of the field house. I told myself, first quarter, into the second quarter, don't you dare look up at that flag. But I couldn't help myself. I turned my head to the left, and I was shocked by what I saw. I saw a brand new Horlick flag. I recognized it as one of the designs from the student contest that was held in 1971. I was so proud of what had occurred. Now, a few years later, I was hired by Walter Stinovich, or as I came to know him, Wally, to be a member of the staff, and he told me the rest of the story. He had kept all of the flag designs from the contest back in '71. And after a year or two, he decided unilaterally that it was wrong to have the Confederate flag as the symbol of our high school. And so he selected one of the designs that he thought was best. And that became the flag. Now, the reason that I share this story is that within the last week or so, 9 African Americans were killed in a church by a man who was white and wanted to start a race war. On his blog, prior to the shootings, it displayed a video of him standing in front of the Confederate flag. At the same time now, there are state legislatures and governors of southern states that are trying to make the decision of whether or not to retain their flags, some of which are the Confederate flag, some of which incorporate the Confederate flag into their state flags. These flags fly over state capitals or they're in state houses. Some of the states, because of the shootings, are now beginning to develop a conscience and beginning to develop an awareness that this flag is a symbol of racism and oppression, and there's no way to rationalize it as part of anyone's heritage separate from its racist roots. Every time I see this flag, it reminds me of slavery, and for most black people, it is a statement of being demeaned, and It's a statement that tells us that the people who fly this flag wish that we were still slaves and in a subservient position. It's time that we move past this. It's time that the symbols of the past of racism are done away with. Again, I've just shared with you an experience from 1971, and unfortunately 44 years later, that experience is still relevant. This is Milt Thompson, and I'm reporting on the website, The Only One in the Room. Thank you, and have a great day.